After watching There Will Be Blood, you will find out that plenty of the filmmaking techniques and skills have been used in this film. Today, I'm going to critically analyze the filmmaking technique and skills that the director had used in several certain scenes. I find out that the movie is involved with tons of components of cinematography, such as camera position, lenses, and various of framing style used in this film. For the camera position, one scene between Eli and Daniel when they are having a conversation in the doorway of the church, the camera moves back but zooms in as the scene progresses, so the background becomes progressively out of focus to draw us into the exchange. Mise en scene works together with cinematography, and this is clear in these scenes we are watching right now. It is the medium shot in which the two characters, showing from the west up, and take up most of the frame. This gives the audience the opportunity to really examine their body language as the two engage in conversation. As Daniel argues with him, he starts to move closer to the reverse Eli, who's standing with his hands folded in front of him and his gaze lowered to the ground. It's kind of showing how intimidating Daniel can be. It's a very well composed shot. Contrast is existing in almost every scene in There Will Be Blood, especially when looking at lighting. High key lighting is used in many shots, some even being almost overexposed, whereas other scenes use more low key lighting, even to the point of the almost being underexposed. These extreme differences represents the dynamic of the film. It is a constant rotation between the intense and calm sequence. The burning tower scene is the significant example to represent the contrast in the film. There is an intense changing in lighting between the fire and everything else. The enormous flames has brightened everything around and lighted up the sky, also producing a large consuming black cloud. This dark cloud stretches across the sky as if it were swallowing everything around in a perpetual darkness. The characters are showing as silhouettes in front of this huge flame, possibly to show the darkness cast upon them. The Daniel watch while a complete stretched and consumed with this darkness. Their face their face can barely be made out with the darkness background behind them. A very dim shot of Eli's face is caught to as he watches the tower begin consumed in flames. All of this contrast in light shows the extremes of the film: lightness and darkness, black and white. Oftentimes, directors will turn to visual techniques to enhance the storytelling when narrative techniques alone are not enough. One of the other scenes that serves as the perfect example for how important cinematography and visual techniques are to movie making is the scene about the baptism of Daniel. This scene begins with low-angle close-up Eli Sunday speaking and giving a sermon in front of the congregation of the Church of the Third Revelation. By this low-angle close-up and zoom, it establishes Eli as the character with the power in the scene. Meanwhile, he's being illuminated by adding a backlight from the cross-shaped window behind, providing Eli's character an intentionally holy aura. For the consideration of color choosing, the bright, warm color palette also showcases to audiences this holy atmosphere. Next, the scene turns to the congregation, showing a close-up of Daniel on the right and William on the left. Simultaneously, we notice the change of the color temperature from warm and lighter colors to dark and cool colors. This changing not only represents the changing in feeling of the characters in the frame, but also uses this to contrast the holy aura of Elias with the resentment of Daniel, who clearly is not willing to be there any longer. Eli is speaking with the enthusiastic passion, thus being illuminated with the warmer hue. When we move to this second shot, we see the cool mood reflected by Daniel's frustrated emotion. The use of the shadow depth of the field establishes William and Daniel as the other characters that this scene focuses on. The characters are placed in the left and right third, with the middle of the frame being filled by the remainder of the congregation. The scene quickly cutting back to Eli after he asked if there was anyone in the congregation seeking salvation. Daniel reluctantly raises his hand and stands up, moving towards the front of the church. Meanwhile, the camera is slightly follow the character's movements with the low-angle shot. This refers to the power exchange between Eli and Daniel. Daniel's progression in power in the scene and becomes larger in the frame now. Daniel joins Eli, standing at the middle of the pulpit in the center of the shot. He is now sharing the warm light that Eli previously occupied alone. Daniel's potential rising power is immediately taken away again as he kneels to the ground, which is forced by Eli and repeatedly being asked to admit to his sin. We can clearly find out that Daniel is placed in the dead center of the frame, under the cross and below Eli, assuming an embarrassed position of submission and come up with the very wide angle lens. It provides the audience a quirky and bold feeling and foreshadows the uncomfortable dialogue that is probably hating to begin. Here we see Daniel is urged to admit his sins in front of the congregation by Eli. He is still placed in the center of the frame, but this time we are moved to a close-up shot as well as the emotion is getting more strictly intense. It represents Daniel's comparatively low position in the scene by the head on camera shot. The camera shifts to a much more close-up shot of Daniel's face and mirrors the increased intention that is occurring within the action of the scene. The angle and zoom out of this frame also allows the audience to focus on emotion that is displayed through Daniel's body language. Next, the camera moves back to Eli with the low angle, reaffirming again his position of power within the scene. During this shot, it uses an interesting juxtaposition which is coming up with his physical languages that eyes are looking towards to the heavens at being higher than himself, hands are clasping together in prayer. Eli is also placed in the middle of the frame, full of uneasiness feeling, despite the fact that he is claiming to worship for God. The visual techniques in the scene so far has established that he is clearly only worshipping further himself and his own power over Daniel. The climax of the scene occurs when Eli forces Daniel to confront his decision from earlier in the film to send his deaf adult son away to school, while the camera is focused again on Daniel. According to the character's facial expression, we can see a drastic transformation of Daniel's emotion from frustration to anger occurs and continually builds with each demand by Eli. Daniel finally unleashes his anger towards Eli, even himself, and he screams, "I've abandoned my child." The camera lingers on him for a while to let the audience absorb the emotion. Then the camera moves back to an even closer shot of Eli as he revels in his pride. It represents that he has begun to control Daniel, something that he was wanting since the beginning of the film. This big close-up represents this drastic increase in emotion. and the camera is brought even lower to show his sense of growing power. Then the camera goes back to a very wide angle. During this action, the wide angle shot with Daniel at the center is re-established with the noticeable difference that the congregation has been removed from the frame. It emphasizes the intimacy about what is occurring is it established between just Eli and Daniel. Afterwards, the low angle of Eli is shown again as he is clearly reveling in pride at his ability to control Daniel, and the camera slightly zooms to mimic this increase in power. Eli is standing above Daniel and begins slapping across on his face constantly, shouting, "Get out of him, devil." From Eli's physical behavior, we can notice that although this is common practice in his church, it is obvious that he adds in a little extra violence just for Daniel. The camera now moves to a medium close-up of Daniel as he is baptized. He looks straight up and mutters there's a pipeline as soon as he leans back up. It showcases that he effectively rejects the baptism and turns it into his strictly selfish endeavor. Daniel is re-establishing his power in the scene by standing up and moving out of the crowd's window backlight, symbolizing his betrayal of the action against for the baptism. He moves to Eli, now taller than him, and goes to shake his hand. From this particular scene, we see a clear character transformation in both Eli and Daniel, and through visual style and tact, in order to be able to enhance storytelling and character development. It creates empathy of Daniel. It is the only time in the movie we see him in position of weakness and submission. The lower angles throughout highlight the scene, and close-up shots let us see his true emotions and personalities. This makes him seem human and relatable. Without it, he's just a greedy man who got what he deserved. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Thank you.